Alright everyone, so today's video is going to be a Joe Biden landslide prediction scenario. So this is not my actual prediction for the 2020 election, but it's a follow-up to my Trump landslide video that I just made. So if you want to see more hypothetical predictions and my actual prediction videos, Senate analysis, etc. on this channel, please like this video and subscribe. But we're going to dive right into it. Of course, in a best case scenario, Joe Biden is going to have all of his safe states. These aren't going to change under any circumstance. In fact, he'll run his margins up in these significantly. Means first is going to be safe. And we'll get right into it. Trump's safe states as well will not change. Nebraska's 2nd district is going to remain toss-up for now. The rest of these states aren't really going to change. Maybe South Carolina will take off the safe category in a Biden landslide, but the rest of these states are going to be roughly the same. So we'll start looking at the state of Nevada for Joe Biden. Again, we're going to be heading west to east here. So if we go back to 2016, the state of Nevada was pretty close for Hillary. Of course, the trends were not good for any Democrat. The county trended Republican. However, it still stayed in the Democratic column. I think if Trump in a landslide scenario would actually do worse in the state of Nevada, he'd probably have more of a 2008 sort of effect where he loses by a substantial amount. Let's say Trump does worse in the state. Biden gets more of a 2008 margin. Again, Biden is no Barack Obama. I don't think he would win the state of Nevada by 13 points, but I think it's highly likely that he could win the state easily by around 8 points in a best case. So I would put Nevada as likely Biden. Again, likely, I'll just go over my ratings real quick for those new to the channel. But safe states are any state that Trump or Biden would win by over 15 points. A likely is anywhere from 7 to 15. A lean is 2 to 5. And tilt is from 0 to 2. So Nevada would be likely Biden, probably around 8 points. It's possible that it can go higher than that. But again, if we look at results like the 2012 election, Nevada was around a 7-point difference, so I think in this case, Joe Biden would slightly do better than Obama's 2012 performance and get around 8 points in the state of Nevada. Of course, in a best-case scenario, Biden would flip the state of Arizona, probably by a lean margin. I'd say at most it's around a 2.5 margin, but again, I think even... but we're talking about a Biden landslide here, so this would be probably the best Biden could do in our current political climate. I think he'd win Arizona by around 2 or 3 points, if not 4 points. If we go back to 2018, the last time Arizona went blue was during the midterms. Kyrsten Sinema ran as a moderate, nearly blue dog Democrat and actually did very well here in the state of Arizona. She won Maricopa County by 5 points, which is very crucial if you're going to win the state as a whole. You basically have to win Maricopa County. She did really well in Pima County, winning that by 15, a safe margin. Santa Cruz County, which always goes blue anyway. Not even a populous county either. So Pima County and Maricopa County are really where the vote pool is. Of course, these rural counties have a lot of votes here, but these are going to benefit Republicans. But Sinema did very well in the state of Arizona overall, and we could see a similar margin with Joe Biden if this trend holds up. If we go to 2016, Trump only won the state by 3.5, so definitely in a landslide scenario, it's very possible that Biden could actually get the popular vote, an absolute majority in the state and get over 50%, whereas Trump maybe stays at 48, but probably drops to maybe 46%, or kind of pulls a Martha McSally where he gets 47.6 and Biden gets around 50 or so percent. So in a landslide scenario, Arizona would go to Biden by a lean margin. Of course, in a landslide scenario, Colorado would go to Biden by a likely margin, probably on the higher end of a likely margin. If we go back to 2016, Colorado went to Hillary Clinton by around 5 points. It's certainly possible. I think in a landslide margin, Biden would easily take this state by 10 points. All of the Denver area minus Adams County here all trended more Democratic. This is where a lot of the votes are. Boulder County too, huge vote pools. Pueblo County, Biden would easily win in a landslide scenario. He would chip away at the margins here in El Paso County, and overall get a similar margin to what we saw in the midterms. If we go to the midterms for the state of Colorado, particularly the governor's race, this was around a 9-point victory. We could see a 9 or 10-point victory easily in a Biden landslide. I don't think Colorado would be safe in a Biden landslide, but surely, like, for instance, El Paso County always seems to be reliably red, but again, these Denver suburbs would go more heavily for Biden. All of these other counties here, Grand County barely goes to the Republicans. A lot of these rural counties, too, did very poorly. These counties, of course, on the outer edges of the state are going to stay safe red, but he definitely needs to just improve his margins here in Adams County, which he definitely did over Hillary. Hillary only won Adams by 8 points. Jared Polis here won it by a safe margin. In a best case scenario for Biden, he would definitely win the state by around 9 or 10 points. I lean more towards 10 points. New Mexico would be safe, obviously, in a best case scenario. I didn't put it at the beginning because I wanted to kind of talk about the state because Hillary only won the state by 8.3% in 2012. New Mexico only went to Obama by around 9 points. But of course, in 2008, we saw an absolute blowout here in New Mexico. Now, I think in a Biden landslide turnout, you'd have to have high Democratic turnout, and of course, I don't know why I can't find it. In the 2018 midterms, that was certainly the case here in the governor's race. Now, I don't think it would be this much of a blowout in New Mexico, where Michelle Lujan Grisham wins by 15 points. I think it's very likely that Biden wins by around 12 points or so in a best case scenario, because New Mexico as a whole, minus a few counties in 2016, trended red. So all of these counties here trended red. Only these 4 counties trended more Democratic. So certainly, I think that all in all being said, without these third-party votes in 2020 in a landslide, Biden's going to win the state by probably a safe margin, maybe like 15, like Michelle Lujan Grisham did in the governor's race. I think I said 12 before. I meant to say 15. Texas is going to be an interesting state to look at in a Biden landslide. If we go back to 2016, Trump did very poorly in the state of Texas for a Republican. He only won the state by 9 points on the dot. And of course, if we go to Beto O'Rourke, he lost the state by just around... Oh, this is Greg Abbott's race. We got to go to the Senate. Beto O'Rourke only lost the state by less than 3 points. This is around a 2.6% loss. Again, midterms are not indicative of general elections at all. Again, if we based midterms off of presidential races, then Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin all would have went basically safe red or likely red for Mitt Romney. That's obviously not the case. But, of course, in a Biden landslide, we could expect to see record Democratic turnout and low, if not moderate, Republican turnout. And, of course, some Republicans jumping ship. So I think in a best case scenario, Texas would not flip for Biden in 2020. I think it's too soon. However, we could see a very close margin where Biden only loses the state by around 2 or so points. So I'd say in this scenario, Trump wins the state of Texas by around 2.5, so that's going to be a lean margin. Nebraska's second would go to Biden by a lean margin. Obama won this in 2008. Biden would win it in a best case. Trump only won it by 2 points in 2016, by the way, so it's very likely to flip in this scenario. This is a very suburban and urban district, so it would go to Biden by probably around 3 or 4 points. Minnesota would go to Biden by a likely margin in a best case, probably around 7 or 8 points. If we go back to 2016, Hillary did very poorly in the state of Minnesota. But of course, Trump only got 44.9% of the vote. He could literally stay at that and Biden could get maybe 53% of the vote or so and ultimately win the state by a low likely margin. So again, if we look at the trends, Biden would obviously have to reverse these rural trends, which in a landslide scenario he could easily do, make a lot of these counties trend more blue back to the Democrats. Of course, hold on to all these counties by super strong margins and get the turnout up ultimately. So I think it's definitely going to be possible he wins it by a likely margin. Iowa is interesting because we're talking about a Biden landslide. If that was the case, then Iowa would go to Biden by a tilt margin. And the reason why I justified that leaning is because Iowa back in 2016 made a huge swing to the Republican. But of course, we go back to 2018 in the House, they made a huge swing to the Democrats. 3 out of the 4 seats in Iowa went to the Democrats. Of course, District 2 was always Democratic, but Districts 1 and 3 flipped, with Stephen King barely holding on to his seat with less than a 3.5% lead. So we could expect that lead to hold. Again, the popular vote here was 50 to 45 for Republicans, maybe 46, I believe, if you add up all the House state results together. You can go on Wikipedia and find that. But we'd probably see a similar margin to possibly 2012, because this was a 52-46 lead for Obama here. But I think ultimately Iowa has shifted much more red since 2012, since 2014. I think if Biden were to win it, it would be barely, but that is a stretch. But again, we're entertaining a landslide scenario. I think in any other case, even if Biden does well and wins in 2020, which is a possibility, I don't think he would win Iowa just because it has gotten so red. Again, if we look at 2016, all but 2 counties in Iowa trended red, and all of these counties that trended red did heavily so. And of course, we go to the results here of the county results. We compare them to 2012. Not even close. These are the only really heavily Republican counties in 2012. If we go to 2016, all of these counties went to Trump by, 70, 73%, 68%, huge margins. And if we look at the trends, they all trended heavily Republican. So ultimately, if Biden were to win Iowa, it would be barely, only because of the huge swings. Wisconsin would be, actually, we'll put Wisconsin as likely too. We're entertaining a best case. Wisconsin would probably go to Biden by around, I'd say 7 or so points. If we go back to 2012, the state of Wisconsin went to Obama by around 7 or so points. And of course, if we go to 2008, now I don't think this would be possible today, but this is an absolute 13-point landslide. Not going to happen in the state of Wisconsin, even in a Biden landslide now due to the political dynamic. I think at most Biden wins the state by around 7 or 8 points. And again, this is a landslide. Now, you may be wondering why I'm being more generous to Biden in the landslide predictions than I was with Trump. But ultimately, Republicans have a lower ceiling in terms of their electoral strength in the Rust Belt and in the Southwest. Well, just the Rust Belt particularly. This is where you're going to notice Biden margins are kind of crazy. They're much higher for Biden in these areas. I think ultimately, in a best case, though, these areas would be blowouts. However, when these areas, these states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, when they do go for Republicans, it's not by a lot. But when they go for Democrats, it is a lot. So again, that would put the state of Michigan also in the high likely category. This is in the low likely category. The state of Michigan would go to Joe Biden by probably around 12 points or so. It would be similar to what we saw in 2018 with the gubernatorial contest, where Gretchen Whitmer won by around 10. I think Biden would do slightly better in a landslide scenario. I think he has the potential to win by around 12. Because again, this was a state in 2012 that went to Obama by 10 points, and in 2008 went to Obama by 17. So I think he'll get somewhere in the middle, get around 12 points. Ohio, obviously, in a best-case scenario, Biden would win Ohio, again by a tilt, just like Iowa. And this would put Biden over the top at 275 electoral votes. But we're far from done. This is a landslide prediction, after all. Biden would probably just edge out a victory here in Ohio. Now, again, in 2012, it wasn't so long ago that Ohio was definitely in play. Obama won the state by around 2 points. I think Biden would do slightly worse in Ohio than Obama's 2012 performance. Again, that would count on him winning over a lot of the Southeast, where if we look at the trend lines, Clinton absolutely lost by huge margins. So ultimately, I think in this scenario, it would be Biden maybe getting 49% of the vote, Trump getting 49 point something. This would be a point range, but I could see Biden winning Ohio in a best case by as much as a point, but that's still a tilt margin. We'll start south and go up north. Obviously, in a best case, Biden would win Florida, probably by a tilt margin, only because Florida is one of those states that even in 2008, even in an electoral landslide back in 2008, it was still within around 2 points or so. So I think just as likely, I think personally the state of Florida would go to Biden by less than a point, because the way it's been trending, Florida has trended more red. If we look at the 2018 midterms, again, midterms are not that indicative of general elections, as I stress in all my videos, but when your state goes red, when the rest of the country for the most part goes blue, that is a pretty bad sign for Democrats. However, I think Biden would win a margin similar to DeSantis's margin, but in the opposite direction. I think he'd get around 49.6 to Trump's 49.2 or 49.3. I think it would be very close, even in a landslide prediction. But again, Florida doesn't really follow landslides to begin with, as we saw with 2008. So either way, it would be close. Biden would edge it out. I think even if Biden were to win the presidency, Florida is a long shot. And if he does win it, it's going to be by within a point. Georgia in a landslide would be very interesting because in 2018, Georgia still remained Republican. But again, we're talking about a landslide here. So in a Biden landslide, it's very possible that he's able to flip the state of Georgia. I always call Georgia the Republican Maine because Maine is one of those states that has trended heavily for the Republicans in the other way, and Georgia kind of has. Or you could say the Republican Minnesota. It's the one state that Democrats always try to flip but ultimately fall short. I think in a Biden landslide, he would do slightly better than Stacey Abrams here with enough campaigning. Again, this is a very long shot, and again, not my official prediction. But I think at a landslide, Biden, due to demographic trends, would win Georgia by a tilt margin. Very, 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 very narrowly. Probably more narrowly than he wins Florida. This would be like a 0.1% victory, but it's possible. The state of South Carolina would only be likely for Trump, so we'll give Trump 163 there. Again, a landslide affects states differently. You'd think a landslide is blanket, Biden doing great everywhere. But as we saw here, Biden was weaker in a lot of areas, Florida and Georgia, because Florida is a state that's trending red, where Georgia's a state trending blue. So they kind of meet in the middle and barely flip to Biden in this scenario. Again, if we look at the race now, Biden's at 320, Trump's at 163. We're not done yet, though. We've got plenty of states to go. If we look at the state of South Carolina, it only went to Trump by around 14 points. Technically, I should put it as a likely margin, but I think ultimately it's still a safe Republican state in my regular predictions. However, this is a Biden landslide. We see the trends. Biden does much better, let's say, in Charleston County, does better here in Richland County, gets black turnout up, and ultimately makes the margin an Obama margin where he gets 44% of the vote to Trump's maybe 54 or 53%. So ultimately, it's not so much Trump doing worse, it's that the Democrats do better here in the state of South Carolina. So I think it would go to Trump by around 12 points. North Carolina would flip by a lean margin in a best case scenario. I think that if we look at 2016, let's look at the last time North Carolina went blue, and it was in 2016, funny enough. It wasn't in the presidential race, but it was actually the gubernatorial race where North Carolina flipped barely. But the attorney general's race, it was not as close of a matchup here. It was 0.2% for Roy Cooper. I think Roy Cooper would do better this time. I think Biden, in a best case scenario, would probably win the state of North Carolina by around 2 points. Keep in mind, North Carolina is still a lean red state. It hasn't really been trending blue. It's kind of been in a weird limbo where it remains lean red. Democrats make some gains. They technically won the popular vote in the state level in 2018, but it's not enough for it to flip under normal circumstances. However, very likely that Biden were able to win this state by around 2 points in a landslide scenario. Virginia would not be safe because I consider safe 15 or more. Virginia would be high likely margin, so I'd say around 12 or 13 points for Biden in a landslide. Again, in 2016, Hillary only won the state by around 5 points. So let's just say in this scenario, Trump maybe gets only 42%. He kind of loses by a Corey Stewart margin. If we go to Corey Stewart in the Senate for 2018, Tim Kaine got 57.1% of the vote. Corey Stewart only got 41.2%. I don't think Trump would do this bad in a landslide. He'd probably get 42%. Biden would maybe get 55 or so, 56. But Biden has the potential in a landslide to win Virginia by a lot. Virginia's a state that's been heavily trending to the Democrats, and probably in the next cycle or two will be a safe Democratic state already. So this is definitely going to be a state that Biden wins by around 12. Pennsylvania would probably be a high lean margin. It's different than Wisconsin and Michigan. Even in a landslide, I think Biden would win the state by maybe 6 points or so. Because Pennsylvania is a state that trended a lot more red in these northeastern counties, and it's going to take a lot. Biden could definitely flip the state. He could win back Lackawanna County by a significant margin. He could hold Monroe. Luzerne County, I think, would be slightly out of reach considering how much it did swing by. But it's not impossible because Luzerne County in the governor's race did go to Tom Wolf. But even in the Senate race for Lou Barletta, as we can look at right now, Luzerne County stayed red. I mean, Lou Barletta is a native of Luzerne County, so that may be a bad example, but it still managed to stay red in this scenario. I think Pennsylvania would be the least likely to swing as drastically as these other states because in the past it has not swung as drastically. If we go back to 2012, these are a little inaccurate, these numbers, because it's only 99% reporting. But Obama won the state effectively by around 5 points. In 2008, in a landslide, he only won it by around 10. So I think it would meet somewhere in the middle. Biden would win it by around 6, 6.5, which I think would still be a very good showing in a state like Pennsylvania for him. New Hampshire is going to be likely Biden only because New Hampshire swings a lot. I think it would be similar to the 2008 margin. Again, this is very, very unlikely, but it's possible Biden wins by around, I'd say on the lower end, maybe around 7 points. I wouldn't give him 10 because this was a bigger landslide than what I think Biden would be able to accomplish. And of course, if we go to the Maine 2nd District, the state of Maine at large, I think Biden would win Maine 2nd by tilt, which would ultimately give him the state of Biden. The state of Biden. God, I'm having a bunch of Bidenisms tonight. This would give him the state of Maine by probably a safe margin because Maine can swing like that. This would give him. Actually, no, that would be likely. My math is off. Sorry, because Trump still did so well here in the 2nd District. He won it by 10 points. Biden winning it alone is a feat, but ultimately Maine would probably be in the high likely margin. Again, if we look at 2016, Trump only lost Maine by around 3 points or so. If we go to the 2012 election, however, Maine went to Obama by a safe margin. I think even in a Biden landslide, he'll make up some of that ground. Biden could make up a lot of ground, but he won't get to the same level Obama did. I think this would be a state that goes to Biden by around 9 or 10 points. But anyway, that's my Biden landslide video. 375 for Joe Biden, 163 for Trump. If you'd like to see more videos like this, first of all, like this video and please subscribe to the channel. I'll be making more election prediction videos like this in the future, as well as probably commentary as the channel gets bigger. So please, please, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.